This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our Xenagos God of Revels EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for another installment of the Up and Up series, where we take an existing deck and we update and upgrade it for the purposes of making it that much better. Today we have Xenagos God of Revels. We've got a few cards going in and a few cards coming out, so let's start with the first card going into the 99 of this deck. It is Doors of Durin. Here we have a legendary artifact for 3 in Gruul colors. Whenever we attack, we scry 2, and then we may reveal the top card of our library. If it's a creature card, we put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Until our next turn, it gains trample if we control a dwarf, and hexproof if we control an elf. I can already tell you that in this deck, we are not going to have any elves or dwarves, so we don't have to really worry about any of these creatures getting trample or hexproof. A high number of them in the 99 already have trample, and we have lots of other ways to give them hexproof, or they already have hexproof built in. Much more important for us is the fact that in a deck that is dedicated to getting biggins into play, we just found a free way to do so. Whenever we attack, we scry 2, and if that top card that we reveal is one of our biggins, it's going into play tapped and attacking. Now, granted, it won't get Xenagos' triggered combat ability, but it's not going to need it, because like I said, if you check out the deck list of this video, this deck is filled with biggins. Xenagos is there just to make them a little bit bigger. So with Doors of Durin going into the 99, we're going to take out a card that was meant to get a biggin into play, and we're replacing it with a reusable artifact card in Doors of Durin. The card that it's replacing is Summoning Trap. Here we have an instant 4 and 2 green mana. If a creature spell that we cast this turn was countered by a spell or an ability an opponent controlled, we would pay 0 rather than paying Summoning Trap's mana value, or mana cost in this instance. And what we got to do when we cast this spell is we looked at the top 7 cards of our library, and we may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. We then put the rest of the cards on the bottom of our library in any order. So what we're doing is we're taking an instant speed 1 of, and then we're replacing it with the repeatable use of the Doors of Durin. And with the Doors of Durin only costing a total of 5 mana, Summoning Trap costing at most 6 and at times 0, we're getting more for our mana, and we're able to reuse that artifact more often than just the one-time use of Summoning Trap. Getting biggins onto our side of the battlefield is what's going to make our general oh so happy. Card number 2 going into the 99. Oh, well, we just kind of spoiled what card number 3 is going to be, but we'll have Atali. We'll talk about Atali in a moment. Rampaging War Mammoth. Here's an example of a biggin. It's a 9/7 with trample. That's all we really care about, particularly because Xenagos, if it triggers and targets the mammoth, then we're sending an 18/14 into combat, and that just makes me feel so good inside. If we decide to cycle the Rampaging War Mammoth by paying X and 2 in a red, then we get to destroy up to X target artifacts when we do so. That's a nice option to have. Some artifact removal could be something that's very important for us during the midst of a game, and if not, well, then we have an 18/14 that's going into trample if it meets up with Xenagos' combat trigger. With the War Mammoth going into the 99, coming out of the 99 is going to be a Terastodon. So here we have a creature with a mana value of 8 being replaced by a creature with a mana value of 7. It's a 9/9 with no evasion versus a 9/7 with trample. Now, this is one of the few creatures in the deck that does not have some sort of evasion. There's no trample here, there's no flying here, it's just a straight up beater. The War Mammoth is going to upgrade the evasiveness of the overall creatures in this build with the trample that it has. Yes, the Terastodon can come down and it can destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents, which more often than not are generally lands or artifacts. Sometimes there's a spare enchantment. So we're taking a little bit of a risk by minimizing our suite of removal by taking out the Terastodon, but we do have the option of cycling the War Mammoth for some artifact removal if we need to do so. Again, swapping out a 9/9 with no trample with removal for a 9/7 with trample and a somewhat more limited removal. I think we're going to come out on the positive in that end, and that's why we're swapping one elephant for another. As we had foreshadowed earlier, the third card going in is going to be Etali, Primal Conqueror. We have here an Elder Dinosaur for 7/7 and 5 and 2 red mana, and it has Trample. When Etali enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. We may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. These are going to be free spells, and they come off of the top of our library as well. Imagine the synergies we have here with the biggins that we can put on top of our library through library manipulation. But we're not done yet. If we pay 9 generic mana and 1 green Phyrexian mana, a green Phyrexian mana can be paid with either 1 green mana or 2 life, we can transform Etali, but we can only do so as a sorcery. When we do, we end up getting Etali, Primal Sickness, an 11/11 trample with an 11/11 trampler with indestructible, and whenever Etali Primal Sickness deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. That's pretty much almost the same thing as saying that this version of Etali has Infect. So if we quote Infect and slap it onto this card with the trample and indestructible as an 11/11, we have another form of Blightsteel Colossus, a creature that's already in the 99 of this deck. Etali Primal Sickness, you are welcomed with arms wide open by our general. With Etali going in, the card it is replacing is going to be Dracuseth. Here we're taking out one 7/7 evasive creature for another. This one is a 7/7 flyer. Now, the attack trigger of slinging around a total of 10 points of direct damage, that might be missed in trying to pick off some annoying little nuisance utility creatures that are on the battlefield, or for bringing our opponent's life totals down a little more precipitously, but I tend to think that what we get out of Etali is going to be so much more impactful than anything that Dracuseth offered. Again, we're taking one evasive creature out with flying and putting another evasive creature in with trample with much more upside. All right, the fourth card going in. We only have 2 left. The fourth card going in is Tyrannax Rex. Look at this guy. You just think that he and Xenagos would just get along so well together. We have a Phyrexian dinosaur that's 8/8 for 4 and 3 green. It cannot be countered. It has Trample. It has Haste. It has Ward 4. And it has Toxic 4. Now, the Toxic 4 is not going to be as powerful as Infect, but still, players that are dealt combat damage by this creature will also get 4 poison counters. So we have an 8/8 Trampler with Haste. The Ward 4 means that if this creature is targeted by our opponent's spells or abilities, they have to pay an additional 4 mana, or that spell or ability is countered. Pretty strong with Tyrannax Rex. With that new guy going in, that new Phyrexian dinosaur going in, it's going to take the place of Carnage Tyrant. Now, what we have here is not so much hair splitting, but we are definitely going to the, wire to wire with the stats. We have a 7/6 in the Carnage Tyrant that's getting replaced by an 8/8. The mana value of 4 and 2 green is being increased by 4 and 3 green. They both have trample. They both cannot be countered. Carnage Tyrant has flat-out hexproof, so there's no way our opponents can target it with any spells or abilities. The Ward 4 is a little more limiting in what we can prevent our opponents from doing to that creature, but with the upside of Haste, which sometimes Xenagos is indisposed as he's languishing in the command zone, the Haste and the upside of Toxic 4 does mean that in a vacuum, when comparing these two creatures to find out which one is more powerful overall, I think we have to give it to Tyrannax Rex over Carnage Tyrant. And that one hurts a little bit because Carnage Tyrant is a very, very strong creature. I think that just goes to show you the power level of the creatures in this deck. All right, our last card going in. Oh, baby, it's the Cityscape Leveler. An 8/8 with Trample for 8 mana. It also has Unearth 8, which means that we can pay 8 mana and return this from our graveyard to the battlefield. It has haste, and at the beginning of the end step, we exile it, or we exile it if it were to leave the battlefield. And whenever we cast this spell, and whenever it attacks, we destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a tap the Power Stone token, which we don't care about, but destroying those permanents when it comes into play and attacks, boy, oh boy, in Gruul colors, that's going to do quite a lot of work for us. And the Leveler is going to replace Woodfall Primus. Same exact mana value, but it's a 6/6 Trampler as opposed to an 8/8 Trampler in the Leveler. And when this comes into play, it destroys target non-creature permanent. The Persist allows it to come back into play to destroy another, but the Cityscape Leveler's ability to destroy a non-land permanent happens whenever it comes into play and whenever it attacks. Those are the changes right now for this Xenagos God of Revels deck. Let me know your thoughts about these revisions in the comments section below.